Hi everybody! As part of Mental Health Month here at PSBA, we called for story submissions from our students and staff so that we can bring you this podcast today. I'm Yvonne, the counselor for PSBA, and today we are exploring how perceptions towards mental health have changed over the past year and a half. So it's been a unique year and a half. I don't think we've seen anything quite like it before. The pandemic that started in 2019 really changed the lives of people around the globe. We went from living and working with huge crowds everywhere to empty streets in countries everywhere. The sudden shift in routine from living and working outside to having to shift everything online was a huge change. It was also around this time that there was an increase in the awareness of mental health, and this was reflected in the influx of social media posts online on how to cope with life under lockdown. Today's podcast interview is the first in a two-part series to share how perceptions of mental health have changed within our PSBA community and how these changes continue even as restrictions are lifting. So you'll be hearing from PSBA staff, students, and alumni in our podcast. Because we hope that by sharing how the people around us have responded to the growing awareness of mental health care topics, that we will have a better idea of how to approach our own version of self-care in our everyday lives. Before we begin, I want to give a very big thank you to everyone who sent in their stories for this podcast. The format of submission was left to the individual, so responses were either sent as text messages or audio clips, so I'll be narrating those that were sent in as text messages. Please note that all identifying information have been changed, names have been changed to protect anonymity, so the names you will hear are completely fabricated. So let's begin with the first question. Before the pandemic, did you give much thought as to what mental health care means to you? How has it changed since lockdown began? So Chloe said that I have always known the importance of mental health. Maybe it's because I do have friends around me who suffer from various mental health issues. But I would say the pandemic did magnify the awareness and importance as more media outlets place importance on it. It has also probably made me take a more active role in keeping a lookout for people around me instead of staying passive and waiting for someone to approach me to tell me about their issues.
So about your first question, before the pandemic, did I give much thought to what mental health means to me and how has it changed since our lockdown? I would say yes. All this while, it's meant a lot to me, especially since I started working and understood the cause and effect of various factors that can have an impact on my mental health. So things like colleagues, the work environment, the job scope, basically my interaction with my surroundings can all play a part in my mental health. So since the lockdown began, it certainly has improved as I am more mindful now of how I communicate by being more selective with the words that I use and being considerate, especially when getting to know someone new. Because it's so easy to jump into conclusions without first understanding an individual's circumstance, and because of our limited communication, so it makes it more important that we choose the right words.
Before the pandemic, I honestly did not give much thought about mental health care at all. Every day goes by so fast, and I was extremely busy with school. I spent most of my days outside with many people surrounding me. However, since the lockdown, I have more time to myself and staying home. It allowed me to learn more about my mental health and discover mental health care.
Stewart said, I've always understood the importance of maintaining a healthy mental state. To do so, I spent a lot of time with the people I care about. After the social isolation during lockdown, I've come to treasure my friends and family even more. And lastly, Lily said that before the pandemic, I was not aware of what mental health care meant. After going to lockdown, I started to look into the various ways of taking care of my mental health, such as by going for online webinars and looking at the research in the field. So lockdown was not just one singular thing, it brought about many challenges that we perhaps did not really consider before, like prolonged social isolation, remote everything, etc., etc. Maybe it's a fortunate or unfortunate, depending on your perspective, thing that social media is so easily accessible and popular because now we're exposed to a lot of information and a lot of updates from people who may be miles and miles away from us but going through the same thing. So we start to compare, we start to see how our lives are similar but different, how we are all going through some sort of restrictions wherever we may be, but some people are handling it better, some people not so much, and we start to explore what are the things we could do that would make our lives easier. The second question, how would you describe your relationship towards yourself and others before and after the lockdown and various phases of reopening? So Chloe responded, I think I've learned to be more patient with myself and others. While we may be stuck in the same situation, but various factors affect how we deal with it. What I went through and how I overcame it doesn't mean it will apply the same to the rest. While I may offer suggestions, I realize that sometimes people just need a listening ear to just rant.
Second question, how would I describe my relationship with myself and others before and after the lockdown and various phases of reopening? So I'd say all this while it's been healthy, I'm happy to say, as I'm a generally sociable person. And I know myself well enough already at this age to know what are the things that I like and don't like, and what are the things that will motivate me and put me off. As my relationship with others can be a bit tricky, but my general rule is if I know that the chemistry isn't there, and you know this very quickly, I will not pursue it further. That's it. It's just not worth the time and energy sometimes. But you can't always choose. So if you have the choice, then move away. If not, then you gotta find your ways to manage it as much as possible. I mean, we're gonna encounter this throughout our lives so many times. Also, due to limitation in gathering, I've in fact grown closer to some of my friends, and because we have to pick and choose now, especially in like places where only two persons can dine in, then you just pick that one friend, and then really you just spend a little bit more extra time with that person. So I actually became closer with some friends because of that. So who are these guys? Most of these people are in the same situation as me. I'm an expat here, and I cannot return home to see my family. So we only have the friends around us to kind of support us in that sense, in person. And I say this in comparison relative to having a massive group outing. And I'm sure sometimes it's just very touch and go, especially with the limited time that you have, and with so many people in the same venue.
Before the lockdown, I feel like I was very outgoing and expressive. This is probably because I used to be with my friends at school every day, and I was able to communicate with them in person. But after the lockdown, my social skills have slightly dropped, as I didn't get a chance to talk with people in person that much. But speaking about the relationship with myself, I think it had gotten better. There were many challenges, and I learned to respond to myself with self-compassion. My perspective on mental health has changed, and during the reopening, I got to meet up with my friends again, and our relationship hasn't changed at all. So, lockdown to me is also a chance to step away from aspects of life that are distracting from your ability to comfortably be your true self.
Stuart said that prior to lockdown, I spent most of my time outside with my friends. During lockdown, because I had nowhere to go and classes were online, I had a lot of time and opportunity to discover more about myself. My relationship with my family has also improved. After this year and a half of restricted measures, my relationship with others have become increasingly important to me. Lily said that the most notable change is in my relationship to others. Before, we were able to have many gatherings and outings, but we have had to adjust to moving everything online after restrictions started. I found it difficult to mingle with my friends and family, and I was quite nervous and worried about this huge change. So with all the social distancing rules and safety management measures, we have had to adapt to different ways of staying connected with our friends. Having to only meet one or two friends instead of one big group means that for some of us, we had to learn to speak up more to keep the conversation going instead of being able to let more outspoken friends lead the conversation. Just one example. So this has definitely made us reconsider our social circle and who we choose to keep in our lives. Third question, Would you say that you are in a better or worse mental space since the very start of the pandemic? You can consider changes you may have noticed in your relationship to yourself and others, how you feel about your present situation, your attitude towards the future, etc., etc.
Since the very start of the pandemic, I'd say there were ups and downs. I was in the worst and also the best mental space. At the beginning, there were many difficult situations in my life that I can't control or change. And at that moment, the relationship to myself wasn't good as today. But after having some time to myself to discover more about mental health, I feel like I've developed a better relationship with myself since then. I learned that some things in life can and can't be controlled, but the only things we can control are our thoughts and actions. My perspective in life had changed significantly since the pandemic and in a much better and positive way.
Question 3. Would I say that I am in a better or worse mental space since the very start of the pandemic? I will say my mental state now, and I'm happy to say that it is better compared to pre-pandemic times. For some reason, I think I'm more focused and more aware of my thoughts. Maybe because I have a bit more time alone to be with my thoughts. So through that, I rediscovered some of my hobbies that I didn't have much time for before, and now I could really do more about it. Like music, for example. We started a band, and I'm taking more like open mics in future. I also lost some weight through exercise and cycling. Cycling is a new thing that I picked up. It's superb. I'm so glad I found cycling through the recommendation of my friends. And as a result, I gained more confidence, which snowballs into other things. Future-wise, the only way is up. I think we will only continue to improve and get better, as more people study and find out what's good and what's not good for our mental health. There's so much development already in this area. So I will continue to be active in the things that I'm passionate about, but at the same time, being mindful of my surroundings and my action.
Lockdown and the various restrictions on going out or socializing has allowed us to slow down and to reconsider what our priorities were and give us the time and space to truly look at the state of our own mental health and re-examine a lot of things that we took for granted before. Before, we may have been aware of mental health and how it may be important, but for a lot of people, lockdown was a time when they were really forced to really confront their perceptions of mental health and how it is an invisible force that can affect every aspect of their lives.
Question 4. What is one mental well-being tip or quote or habit that has stood out to you? Okay, I really like this quote. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things.
A mental well-being quote that has stood out to me is, "The strongest people are those who win battles we know nothing about."
Quotes are a great way to summarize what is important to us and handy to keep in our mind to remind us of our priorities. Number 5. What mental well-being habit have you picked up? And how is it going for you? So Chloe, firstly, she said that reaching out to talk to people or to rant instead of bottling it and letting negative thoughts manifest. It is not easy to reach out, at least for me, but it is an ongoing process.
A mental well-being habit I have picked up is to be flexible on my behavior. In other words, we all tend to get stuck in habitual ways of responding to stress and painful emotions. We feel bad and our default behaviors kick in, often without much awareness. But here's the thing, you can't keep doing the same old thing and expect new results. So, for example, if every time I feel anxious, I start worrying, and then find that worrying only makes me more anxious, maybe it's time to think about a new way of responding to anxiety, like finding a good distraction, taking a deep breath, and just try to think positive.
Stuart said that he started eating healthy and exercising on a daily basis in order to stay positive. It was quite beneficial for me because exercise improves brain function and the increase in endorphins are very helpful in improving mood.
Question 5. What mental well-being habit have I picked up and how is it going for me? So I've picked up learning to set aside time purely just for rest, not doing anything else apart from just resting. Okay, I also learned to put in time, effort, and energy for my passion projects. For example, music and cycling, just to name a few. And to do whatever makes me happy, including the little things like making a cup of coffee in the middle of the workday. It really, just perks me up and makes the rest of the workday really pleasant. And so far, it's all been going superbly well, and I hope it remains that way.
I've really enjoyed hearing about the different habits that people have picked up over the course of the past year and a half to sort of really try to protect their mental space, their mental energy, and their overall mental health. Like some of you have already said, mental health does not just exist by itself. It can seep into and affect every other aspect of our lives. If you're not in the best mental state or emotional state, it affects how you work, how you talk to other people, how you react when something does not go your way. But on the other side, when you look after your mental health and you do all the things that you need to do to protect your mental health, life starts to look a lot better and it becomes a lot more manageable. I hope this podcast episode has been helpful for you. It has definitely been very eye-opening for me to see how the people around me have turned all this information online into something that's personally helpful and relevant for themselves. So before I go, I just want to say that for the Mental Health Month in October, we have another podcast lined up for you. We will be talking about positivity, but not the usual talk about being positive. We will be talking about how excessive positivity might actually be more harmful than helpful. So until then, I'm Yvonne, the counselor for PSBA. Thank you for listening today, and I'll see you next time.